Alright, I know what you're thinking. Yes, the Green Bay Packers did lose this week. What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Even though I might not look it, I am Tempest from WrestleTalk.com, and I'm very pleased to bring you the latest edition of the WrestleTalk Recap. The match of the week this week goes to one of the final matches in the G1 Climax tournament, that being Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Zack Sabre Jr. An excellent example of technical wizardry from both Tanahashi and Sabre. It gave us a proper send-off for the G1 Climax tournament, one of the best matches you'll see out of the B block this year. The show of the week this week is going to go to AEW Dynamite. While the Dinner Debonair segment did steal the show, we also got 4 spectacular tournament matches, including the return of the cleaner, Kenny Omega. Some of the biggest news stories this week, well, first and foremost, Mustafa Ali was revealed as the hacker character from WWE SmackDown. There were also a pair of injuries on AEW Dynamite, first to Ray Phoenix and then to Alex Reynolds, with Reynolds' injury in particular gaining harsh criticism of AEW failing to protect their stars once again. Moving over to this week's shows, and we had Raw. Again, the show featured an epic burial of Retribution just when you thought they might be doing something with the group. Nope. It's done. Just forget about it. Who needs Retribution? No one. I don't need Retribution. Fast forward to NXT, and you had a newsworthy show with Pat McAfee returning to help Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan capture the NXT Tag Team Championships. Over on the other show, as we've said, Kenny Omega returned as the cleaner, beating Sonny Kiss in just seconds to advance to the semifinals of the AEW Eliminator Tournament. Also on the show, Ray Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. had an excellent lucha match where Ray Phoenix came out on top. Unfortunately, he injured himself in the match and will not be able to advance in the AEW Eliminator Tournament, instead being replaced by Pentagon Jr. However, the creme de la creme of this week's show was Chris Jericho and MJF performing the Dinner Debonair, a song and dance number, and not quite what they had advertised, but surely the biggest segment on this show by a country mile.
Is Daniel Bryan retiring? What?
And it is now time for the G1 Climax Report. Dun 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 dun. Of the 2 remaining G1 Climax events to cover on this show, we had the B Block Final on October 17th. The B Block Final featured Yoshihashi defeating Toru Yano, Juice Robinson defeating Hiroki Goto, Hiroshi Tanahashi defeating Zack Sabre Jr. in this week's match of the week, Kenta defeating Tetsuya Naito, and Sonata capturing the B block by defeating Evil with some help from my boy Hiromu Takahashi. Then of course we had this year's G1 Climax Finals with Kota Ibushi taking on Sonata. While this match didn't quite live up to previous year's G1 Climax Finals, it was still very, very good, with Kota Ibushi fighting through injuries that he'd suffered in previous matches. He was able to defeat Sonata with 2 Kamigoyes, making Sonata the very first man to ever kick out of his finisher. With this win, Ibushi captured his 2nd straight G1 Climax trophy, marking the first time that this has happened since 2003 and 2004 with Hiroyoshi Tenzan. And now a word from our G1 correspondent. Okay, Chelsea, the G1 Climax is over. We need your analysis. What did you think of the tournament? Was it a thumbs up or thumbs down? Thank you, Chelsea. Make sure you go over to WrestleTalk.com to get all of this week's written features. There were a ton of them this week, including our list of the 10 wrestlers that you may not have known wrestled under a mask. Also this week, we had our list of the 10 best G1 Climax matches from this year, written by our own Sana Lad, and my list of every G1 Climax participant ranked from best to worst and worst to best. Back over on YouTube, you had Adam Blampier's latest list of the 10 greatest sellers in wrestling history.
Now, I don't mean selling in terms of goods for cash, because in that case, this list would just be #1 Toru Yano DVD salesman and then 9 minutes of that pipe screensaver.
Tomohiro Ishii. It was another big week for Parts Fun Known with the return of Calling Spots, including a fun little song and dance from our own Adam Blampier about Roman Reigns.
So gather round townsfolk from peddler to thief. Let me tell you the tale of the great tribal chief. He had hair wet as dogs, he had teeth white as dogs, he had friends who were dogs. He's a really big dog.
We also had the return of Fast Feuds, which highlighted the rivalry between John Cena and CM Punk from 2011. Also, we have reskinned the Patreon for No Rolls Bart into a Parts Fun Known Patreon. You'll want to go and check out the video with Lori Blake explaining what you can get if you sign up. Back over on Wrestle2, you had more coverage of the G1 Climax tournament with myself, Randy Andy Datson, and Sana Lad, as well as another edition of Screen Grapple with housemate Simon. But of course, you'll want to check out our new show, Wrestling Daily, a daily news show hosted by the lovely Alex McCarthy. And now for something completely different. Have you spent hours playing Among Us like me? Well, if so, you'll want to go over and check out Phenomena Nerds, where Adam Blampier and Lori Blake took an in-depth look at social deduction games. Adam, of course, listed 10 social deduction games to add to your collection, while Lori explained why lying to your friends is so much fun. Coming up this week on our various channels, you of course have coverage of Hell in a Cell, a pay-per-view where they still just don't feel the need to announce more matches for their show. But we, of course, will have 3 separate Hell in a Cell matches on this show. Make sure you watch along with us. And of course, you have Quizzlemania 21. Quizzlemania goes Hollywood. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's Hollywood based, but WrestleMania 21 was, so maybe. We'll see. And that just about wraps it up for me this week with the WrestleTalk recap. I have been Tempest from WrestleTalk.com, even though I don't look at this week. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, that of course being Twitter at WrestleTalk_TV, and on Instagram at WrestleTalk.official. You can follow me on Twitter at TempestWT, and I will see you next time. With my proper mask, hopefully.